Perk Sheni Halacha Beis. Mahi Teshuva. What is Teshuva? Although the Rambam explained earlier what is vidui, person says chotosi avisi poshati, various expressions of various degrees of transgression. Chotosi is inadvertent, avisi is deliberate, poshati is defiantly. Nichamti uboshti, I regret and I'm embarrassed. V'lo oshuv, and I will not return. The Rambam said, any chosed I will not return to every cross that line ever again. But what is actually tshuva? When we speak about not detaching yourself from whatever the past was, mahi tshuva, sheyazov achote cheto. Firstly, you have to stop doing the sin. You abandoned the sin. Person was behaving a certain way until this point. You stop at that moment. Yazov. You're turning over a new leaf. V'yasiru mimachshavto. And you remove it from your mindset. V'yigmar belibo. And he concludes within his heart. Shli yaseh. And there's a commitment, you're not going to do it ever again. So Rambam says, first it's called azivas achet. You have to have in mind, you will no longer continue to do what you've been doing until now. And to be able to do that, your siru machshavto, and it's no longer part of your purview. It's no longer part of your behavior pattern. And the level of commitment is v'yigmar libo, and he concludes in his heart, the level of commitment, shlo yaseh od. He's not going to do it ever again. Shenemar, Yazov Rosha Darko, quotes the Posuk, the Russia will abandon his way, his evil way. That's Azivas Achet. Yazov Rosha Darko. So first you have Azivas Achet, V'chein Yisnachem al Shovar. Besides making the commitment, you're not going back there ever again, you have remorse for what you have done in the past. That's remorse. Shenema ki achrei shuvi nichamti. After I've returned, I have nichamti, I have regret. And what degree does the person have to have that level of commitment? The yod olav yodei talumos. And the one who knows all that's hidden, which is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he should be the one to attest that he will not return to that sin ever again. So therefore, you can't delude yourself, because you know it has to be at a level of honesty that it's not only you know, to be forgiven and to be atoned, to be reinstated, the Yodea Talumos, the one who knows all that's hidden, he attests to the fact that this is an authentic, truthful commitment, that he's not going back there. Shenemar, lo nemar od Elokeinu l'masu yodeinu. I just want to stop for a moment. There's a Rabbeinu Yonah, which we learned in Shari Teshuva, that he explains one doesn't always need azivas achet. If you remember, Rabbeinu Yonah says, if a person never sinned in a certain area before, and he sins even deliberately, the first time he fails, the claim against him is not that serious, although it's deliberate. Why? Because very often the person is not aware of his vulnerabilities, and when he's seduced by the Yetzer Hara, the person didn't realize how easily he could be seduced, and therefore he's immediately drawn into it. But that's not normally his behavior pattern. It's not his behavior pattern. He never did this before. And as a result of that, since he was unaware, even though we're all far from perfect, and we have vulnerabilities, but we're not aware of those vulnerabilities. As a result of that, the claim against the person is not as extreme, because when he failed, he was unaware to what degree he was vulnerable. Once he fails, and he realizes he has those vulnerabilities, What should he do? Immediately, he should create fences and safeguards that he should never cross that line again. And he does not. And he fails the second time. The second time he crosses that line, he transgresses. Rabbi Yehuda says the claim is much more serious. Why? Because now that you know that what you're capable of doing, because you have certain weaknesses, how do you not take every precaution never to cross that line again? That you did not, it's a breach, it's a level of disrespect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, the punishment is doubled. There's a double claim against the person. The level of culpability and liability is much more serious. First time less, second time more. After he does it the second time, and the Gemara tells us that other Vishona, when a person goes and he continuously, he violates more than once, Nasis lo keheter. It becomes part of his routine, his pattern. So now he does tshuva. He realizes where he's arrived. What do you have to do? You got to immediately stop at this moment. You can't continue because the routine already has become you're crossing lines without any level of conscience or less level of conscience. So Rabbi Yehuda says in that second situation, that's where you need Aziv Sachet. Since it's part of your routine, so therefore, how do you go forward? Firstly, you have to make up in your mind that this behavior is not going to be any longer. I'm stopping cold in my tracks. Now, after we stop cold in my tracks, now we talk about, I will not go back there. I will not go back there ever again. And now you reflect on that, how bad it was, that now this is the nichamti. This is the remorse, the regret that you have for doing that. First, it's recognize you did the wrong thing. I will not continue doing it. Whatever I've done till now, I'm stopping now. Will I ever go back there again? I'm not going back there. Now, afterwards, nichamti. And then you have the shame, what we call the busha, which determines the degree of remorse, the degree of regret. What a person went, normally there's not his behavior pattern. There's a weak moment and he failed. This is not the normally way he behaves. He's a tzaddik. The Gemara says in Brochos that if you saw a tzaddik who sinned at night, when morning comes, you have no right to suspect that he's a sinner any longer. Why? Because bevadei osa tshuva. By the time morning comes, he definitely did tshuva. Because after he realized his failing, even it was deliberate, he immediately had remorse and he did tshuva. In that situation, there's no aziv sachet. You don't have to abandon that behavior pattern. It's not his behavior. So Rabbi Yehuda says, if a person normally is a sinner, we speak Lashon Hara, we do certain things, that's where you need aziv sachet. You have to stop doing the chet. You have to make that mental commitment no longer. Now we talk about the not going back there ever again, and we speak about the shame, the remorse, the regret. But a person who normally doesn't behave this way, but we have weak moments, and he fails once, since it's not part of his regular behavior pattern, one doesn't need aziv sachet. Fine, that the Torah tells us, a Jew is not permitted to put a stumbling block before his fellow. Then it says, you should fear God. So Rashi cites the Chazal, the Medrash. Why after this, it says, you should not put a stumbling block before your fellow. And Rashi says, doesn't mean a blind man's walking and he's not to put your foot out, he should trip. But rather means you give a person bad advice. And you're advising him as if it's in his best interest, but factually, you have an ulterior motive by giving him his advice, which is not in his best interest, and it's in your best interest. For instance, you advise a person to sell a piece of property to have the means to purchase something else. But in truth, and it could be the person will not lose by it. But nevertheless, the reason why you're advising him is because you want that property, or you want that property for a third party, to avail that property to a third party. Okay? That's Lifnei V'Lusit and Michshol. You're giving the man bad advice. It's not ultimately his best interest. You have an ulterior motive. But the person says, but he's going to profit on it. He's going to do well. God knows your true intent. As much as you're deluding yourself and you're convincing yourself it's in his best interest, but Hashem knows the truth. And knowing that Hashem knows the truth, and you know you're going to be put under that microscope to see if it was really with that pure intent, the person has to think 1,000 times before he advises somebody to make sure it's in that person's best interest. That's the whole idea of Yorei Hashem Elokecha. That's why it juxtaposes Yorei Hashem Elokecha till Fnei Lo Sitei Mershol. So I'm saying the same thing. We believe a lot of things, but if you know that it has to meet that litmus test, the Yor Olav Yodea Talumos, that Hashem has to attest to it, which He knows every nuance of feeling in our hearts and our minds. As much as you want to delude yourself and play the role of tzaddik, if you're not there, you're not there. So therefore, you're going to go deeper into it, understand what the consequences are, that it's not going to help you. Therefore, the person will be more honest and try to achieve that level of honesty.